Okay, it's past 7, so we're going to get started, and I hope others will join us. Welcome to our weekly Zoom class number 1, and there will be another Zoom class number 2 on Thursday. And then after this week, probably, I won't promise, but probably there won't be a Zoom class 2 next week and maybe the next week. But I'll let you know based on how things go this week whether we will need to do that or not. But we should be at a place that we probably can get by with just one Zoom class, and that'll give you more time to spend working with your Zoom teams and other things that you need to do as well. We have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to ask you to put the listening ears on. I'm going to ask you to do as I've done before. Please, unless it is just something you have to do, hold off on questions throughout the presentations unless it's just something that you really need an answer to. And I'm going to ask the other instructors if they would to be cognizant of that and do like we've done before and take care of as many of those as you can, and then we'll discuss any of them out loud that we need to discuss with the whole group. But if you'll listen, I think you'll get most of them will be answered, if not all of them, and then we can. I think you'll accomplish more if you'll focus on what we are trying to tell you tonight. Very quickly, just some housekeeping things that we need to talk about. It's important that you adhere to the schedules that Dr. Crawford and I have provided you with, and on Sunday night at the latest at 9 o'clock. It doesn't have to wait until that time, but we need your work. It takes us, we have to I mean, you're just one person, and it takes a lot of time to provide the feedback that we need to provide to you, so we need your work on time. I did an audit as of yesterday of where you need to be, and I have sent out information. If you owe me something, please take care of that immediately. I may excuse it a little bit from the beginning, but later on, late work is no excuse unless you have communicated with me, and I'm sure Dr. Crawford will say the same thing. Late work is not, we're not going to excuse late work unless you have spoken with us and there is an emergency that we need to, and we understand things happen. So, don't think that we're unreasonable, but we expect proper communication if it is something that we need to work with you with. So please take care of that if you owe us work. The other thing is protocol. If there is a problem or if you don't understand something, your first recourse is to try to reach out to Dr. Crawford or to me, and Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Shepard also have their GWU emails, and so you can reach out to them as well with something, and if it's something they can answer, then they'll get back with me or get back with Dr. Crawford, and we can take it from there. But unless it's just something that is dealing with the program in general, please do not bother Dr. Lamb with things that Dr. Crawford and I can take care of. He has a lot to do, and most of the time he's going to send it back to us anyway. So go ahead and follow the protocol and get it to us when we, from the beginning. Another reminder, Dr. Crawford is probably being a little more intense at this point with the editing that he's doing than probably he needs to be, and he and I are going to talk about that because I don't want you to think that he or I, that our job is to dot every I for you or to cross every T. We're not going to do that. You are graduate students and you have already completed a graduate program, so that is not what we're supposed to do. Now, he and I will point out to you that there's a problem with syntax, there's a problem with grammar, there's a problem with spelling. We'll point that out, and we may highlight something, but we're not going to go in and fix it for you. That's not what we're supposed to do, and we're not going. So don't so if you think that that's what we're going to do, you need to go ahead and figure out that that's not going to happen. Secondly, it is not grammar, punctuation. It's not everybody's strength, and you have to recognize what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And if you know that that is not a strength of yours, then you need to find you another set of eyes to say, hey, will you look at this before I submit it so that it is the best that it possibly can be. That's just a good best practice for you. You know what you're good at, and you know what you're not good at, and everybody's not good at everything. So it's not the end of the world if that is not your strength. But if it is not, then do something about it, and and fix it. I want us to look at, this is week 4, and you need to go back and look at everything that is in red for weeks 2, 3, and 4. And this will let you know exactly, when you read that, what Dr. Crawford and I should have in Blackboard at this point, what you should have submitted. Now, this is week 4. So by Sunday night, I want you to look at this. The APSL Task 2 revisions will be due to either Dr. Crawford or to me, whoever your instructor is, for a final grade. So the feedback that you get from either of us and from your peers from the peer reviews, you should look at that and you should make the necessary changes and go ahead and submit it to the APSL assignment Dropbox as a final grade. Now, does that mean that Dr. Crawford or I cannot send it back from that? We can, but we shouldn't have to at that point, because if you're doing what you're supposed to do, then by the time it gets there, it should be ready for a final grade and you should be able to move on. However, he and I have the option of sending it back and telling you that this still needs to be fixed, or we're not going to let you move on to task 3 or the next task until it is properly taken care of. Now, once a grade is given, it is left up to Dr. Crawford and me whether we feel like that changing a grade to a higher grade once it's done is justified or not. That's left up to us. We don't have to. So it's based on you as a student and whether we feel like that you have put forth your best efforts to begin with, or whether we've asked you several times to do something and you have not done it. We're going to be fair about it. But just remember, you're still required to make the changes, but we don't have to change the grade. That's going to be left up to us, and that is going to be a case by case, Dr. Crawford, because we're learning the students now, and if you're the same one that's constantly doing the same thing, then you need to pick up your game. So just know that. And I know this is plain talk, but that's the only way I know to do it, Dr. Hamilton, is just to be plain right now with things. The APSL Task 3 draft, which we're going to talk about tonight, many of you are already on point with that, but the draft of that will be due in discussion board by this Sunday night at the latest. And then the APSL Task 2, the 2 peer reviews that you have to do, will be due to the assignment Dropbox. And many of you have already done that. They've been in discussion board, so if they're in discussion board, there's no reason to go ahead and not put it in our assignment Dropbox and take care of that. Now again, Dr. Crawford and I look at these, and I will tell you, some of my students, they did extremely well with the APSL Task 1. But I saw you get a little bit slack on the APSL Task 2, and I probably gave you more credit than I should have, but I'm going to watch and see if the same thing happens on Task 3. So don't let up. In fact, I expect things to stay as good as they were or get better, so don't back down on us, okay? That takes us to and that. Okay, I want us to quickly look at, let's go to the APSL Template materials. Okay, very quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But I do think we need to quickly just do a very quick recap on where we are at this point. Okay. I hate it when it does that. Again, other than just clean up stuff, task one, I think all of that has come in pretty good. It's just a matter of cleaning it up and making sure that I think I've got a couple of students that need to do just some minor touch-up work with that. But task one, you should be way beyond that, and there should be no problems with that at all. Task two, and that is where you've got to put the final document in for a final grade this week if you haven't already done so. Many of you have already done that. So make sure that you have cleaned it up, you've cleaned it up well, that you have followed APA as it's supposed to be followed, and that any recommendations that has been made, that you adhere to every bit of that, and you move forward with it. Remember, when you get down here to the most pressing need must be something that can be measured with a test score. It must be something that dealing with student achievement. So just remember that it cannot be a program. It cannot be discipline. You know, those things will come later on, but it must be something that we can measure with a test score. We can look at it with a test score, and you would have analyzed all of that, you know, as you were developing or getting to that point. Your data presentation, again, remember, it shouldn't be one thing because it says in the forms of charts, tables, graphs. And again, you need to remember that this should have a professional look. Remember, too, that this work is going to be finally submitted to DPI. They're going to look at your work. So it needs to be right when you do that, and it needs to look good. If you have any questions about the APSL Task 2, you need to communicate with Dr. Crawford and myself, and we will be glad to help you. A reminder, those of you that are in Dr. Crawford's 2 classes, you have the option, if Dr. Crawford has told you that there's something that you need to work on, you have the option of submitting that work to me in my internship shell for me to look at it as well. Now, there's no reason to send it to begin with for both Dr. Crawford and me to look at. Send it to me if you're having problems with it. And if you are in my 2 groups and you need additional eyes to look at it, you send it to Dr. Lamb, and then Dr. Lamb will be working through Dr. Hamilton and through Dr. Shepard to assist with that as well. So just know that you have those other options. You have those options as well. Dr. Crawford.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to go ahead and just lend it to you at this point. And if you would just move forward before I go into task 3, because I think what you have to say will assist with, will basically serve as an introduction to some of the things that they're going to look at in task 3. What Dr. Crawford is going to do this evening, he's going to share with you as a sitting principal, he's going to relate what you're doing in the APSL to the work of each school's school improvement team, the school improvement plan, and those things. He's going to talk with you how they all align with the work that you're doing right now. So Dr. Crawford, I'm just going to give it to you, and whatever is on your mind, just speak.
Yeah, so it's pretty pressing because Monday I'll have my first of my 2 leadership team meetings with my school improvement team. I believe everyone in North Carolina, or most districts, are using Industar to house their school improvement plans. That's the vessel that the district is going to. And here in Guilford, they're pretty specific about making sure that you have specific indicators and then tasks assigned to those indicators, and that you're regularly using your current school data to match up where you are with those indicators. So one thing that Guilford County did this year is they're really taking a look at the big picture. It's not uncommon that schools set goals such as school X will increase language arts scores from 35% to 45% by the end of the next school year. And while that's a really great goal, from school to school, it's going to be iffy as to whether or not you make that 10-point jump. So what Guilford County Schools did this year for each school was they calculated the amount of growth needed for each school so that the district can also make growth. So for those of you who don't know, there is a school district growth grade. And just like as a principal, your school cannot make growth if you have more than half your teachers making negative growth. The same thing applies for a school district. And if you didn't know, yes, there are consequences for a school district that also does not make growth. So they actually calculated out the growth scores needed not only for the school district to make growth, but also that aligns with the school district's strategic plan. And so they were able to give us those scores. And so for a school like mine, which is housed in one of the most economically impacted portions of High Point, we have a goal of increasing our third grade, because that's one of our targets on the district leadership, the district strategic plan, of increasing our third grade reading scores by a function of 3%. So we then use those targets to then create our goals in and around IndyStar. So we have a goal for reading, math, third grade reading specifically, and then we were told to choose one other goal. And for us, we were looking at dealing with discipline. It's pretty jarring when you're at a principal's meeting and they tell you, so they give us discipline updates regularly, and they pulled up at the December principal's meeting the number of referrals in the district to that point. I've done elementary, I've done middle, I've done high school, so I have certain expectations in my head, and I was really shocked to find out that high schools had the most, but elementary schools actually came in second in Guilford County as of December in the number of referrals that have been processed in Power School, which that's pretty jarring when you deal with that. So my school, we have an IndyStar goal in and around discipline and discipline data based on our data last year. So when we have our leadership team Monday, we'll be looking at where are we right now with our third grade reading based on our mid-year data. We'll be looking at our pre-scores of third grade. So what's our DIBELS data K1? And then we'll be looking at our discipline data based on where we were this time last year. That's the one area I think we're making definite progress. We've about cut our referrals in half based on this time last year. Still work to go, but that's one data point I know I'll be able to hang my hat on. This year in third grade, I've got 2 first-year teachers, and we're up 10 points over last year. Now it's an apples to oranges comparison, but then so that's the kind of data will be tied directly into IndyStar to make sure we're on track on making our goals toward the end of the school year. Between that and just having finished up mid-year PDP conferences, and for those teachers that have EVOS data, I was really able to have some pretty significant and specific information or conversations around what needs to be done. So I have a Spanish immersion program. I have so my students in 2nd through 5th grade get an hour of English per day. Well, my English teacher has EVOS data, and in looking at her EVOS data, when you look at that third group of kids, the highest group of kids, that group of kids had the lowest EVOS growth. And then looking at her 4th and 5th graders this year, these are all kids that are green and blue readers in the Spanish immersion program. So my conversation with her specifically was, let's make sure, especially as we go into the second half of the school year, that you're being very, very intentional about giving those group of kids who you didn't have the best growth with, the type of interventions and enrichment programs that are going to allow us to kind of flip that data goal over its head. So that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. Like I said, I'll be doing this with my leadership team on Monday when we do some IndyStar check-ins, and we'll be doing that based on just natural school generated data.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Crawford. That is valuable, valuable information. And those of you in South Carolina with IndyStar, you need to find out what is it in South Carolina that equates to what Dr. Crawford was talking about. There is, in every state, there is something that equates to exactly what he was saying. So you just need to find what that is, and then that's how you match it in the work that you do in South Carolina or whatever state that you're in. Most of you are in South Carolina or North Carolina. Let me see. I'm going to try to do this and pray that I don't lose something. What I want to do now is to introduce you, formally introduce you to task 3 of the APSL. Now, again, that is what will be due on Sunday night, in discussion board for your peers to look at, and then for Dr. Crawford and I to look at it and to give you some valuable feedback on it. Let's very quickly look at, well, let me go back just a little bit. Very quickly, I want to basically do an analogy of things. In task 1, I want you to think about this as kind of like being in a hospital, and you are considered to be the head physician, the chief surgeon, or whatever. But in task 1, you as the chief surgeon, you recognize that there is a problem. You've got lots of problems, and as the chief surgeon, you have pulled together. You've done some research. You know that the problems are there. You've selected the PLC selection. You've pulled in some of the best doctors that work under you to help you with the problems that you've got. And then next, you have a meeting with them. And that's kind of what you're doing at your school. And at that meeting, you talked about over the next while, we've got a lot of problems, and I need your help. As we identify these problems, I need your help in trying to help find solutions, and so that we can get better. We can make things better. We can and in this case, it would be the patients. In our case, it's the students. The students would be our patients. So when you get to task 2, okay, again, the doctor's pulled his team together. You've pulled your team together. In task 2, you've got lots of problems, so you start collecting. How can we come up with strategies for trying to work with these problems? So you begin looking at the data. You come up with lots of ways, and in a hospital, you would look at you'd look at X-rays, you'd look at blood tests, you'd look at all kinds of things that's been done. Well, in schools, you're going to look at test data. You're going to look at, assessments that have been done along the way. You're going to look at just a lot of times it may be, it could be just talking to the teachers, and just having conversations with them. Well, then after you do that, the doctor in the hospital would take all that, would begin looking at all of the collection of the strategy and say, okay, I'm going to look at the X-rays, I'm going to look at the blood work, I'm going to look at all of this stuff, because I've got to come up with a process and a criteria for identifying, out of all these problems I've got there, what's my most pressing need? What is the most important thing that we need to be dealing with, and that's what you've done at your school. And then you collaboratively analyze that data. At the school, you analyze the data. At the hospital, they look at all the x-rays, they look at all the reports, the blood work and everything. That's what they've done there. And then based on that, you've got lots of needs. But then, if in the hospital, if it's life-threatening, then, that would be the most pressing need, wouldn't it? In your school, you've got to identify the life of your school is at stake. So what is the problem that is most life-threatening for the life of my school? What is the most pressing need? And that's what you've done there. And then you've written about it there, and then again, your data presentation, you're graphically showing it there. Okay, which brings us to task 3. Now, I want you to put your ears on now, because this is where in the past students seem to always, a lot of students get this wrong. I want this to be the best group we've ever had. So I want you to listen. The candidate's going to do, they're going to research best practices. In other words, you're going to create a literature review. But not only are you going to do that, you remember in task 1, remember you had to do a literature review on what a PLC looked like? Okay, this time you have identified your problem. So you're going to create a literature review, and based on your identified problem, what does research, what's the best practice out there? What does research say are the best practices out there for dealing with your identified problem? What do the experts say? Just like the doctor is going to look in the hospital, they're going to look for the best research out there to identify with whatever that sickness is in their hospital. You're going to look for what is the best remedies out there, the best research for dealing with your identified problem. So number 1, you're going to create a literature review. You're going to do another, I call it a little mini research paper right there. And in that, listen carefully, we expect to see a minimum of 5 resources in that area in your literature review. A minimum of what is the best. Now, some of you are going to say, well, how far back do we go? I'm not going to tell you that. You're going to figure that out. Now, if it goes back, I'm not saying that something that happened in the 1950s is not good, because you can refer to it, but this is 21st century, people. You need to be looking at what is out there, what is cutting edge stuff. And that's what needs to be in your literature review. Okay. Listen carefully. You're doing 2 things. And I'm going to come on down because I think it'll explain it better on down here in the prompt. Candidates will create, okay, your literature review, and we've talked about out there, but you're going to do something else, and an annotated bibliography. You're doing 2 things: a literature review and an annotated bibliography. Now, that annotated bibliography, and I'm going to take you to a place in just a minute, that annotated bibliography is still going to all the stuff that you put in that annotated bibliography is still going to be dealing with the best practices. You're looking for solutions to your problem, remedies to your problem. What is the best medicine out there? If it was a doctor, it's the best medicine. What's the best medicine to fix what your identified problem is? So everything in your literature review and everything in your annotated bibliography should refer back to that identified problem that you've identified for your school. Now, again, the literature review, a minimum of 5 sources you're going to use, regular sources, and then in your annotated bibliography, listen carefully. There should be a minimum of 8, listen carefully, 8 annotations. 5 of those annotations are going to be just regular annotations. It could be a book. It could be it's just in other words, and I'll show you something, an example of that in a minute. It's a regular annotation. And then you're going to do 3 that are going to be technology oriented and research based. And Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Shepard's going to be talking about that, and Dr. Crawford will be chiming in on those things in just a minute. But again, I'm laying the groundwork. You're doing 2 things there in prompt 1. You're doing a literature review with a minimum of 5 sources, and you're doing an annotated bibliography with 8 annotations, 5 of them regular annotations, 3 of them will be technology oriented and research based, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. I'm going to go back. I just want to lay the groundwork for prompt 1 and prompt 2. Then that is all of prompt 1. Then prompt 2, candidates will detail how the PLC created and used multiple. Now, multiple means how many? More than 2. So multiple graphic organizers and visuals such as charts, graphs, tables, timelines, etc. And you're going to embed them in the narrative to demonstrate how the PLC projects that the chosen best practices that you've taught, you've researched it. How is all of that, the chosen best practice strategy that suggests the use of technology not already being used, how are they going to be used, and how are you going to try to prove that they can and will make a difference? So in prompt 1, again, you're writing. In prompt 2, you're showing. Now, showing means that you've got to do some narrative work to describe what we're looking at. But again, with the programs that you look at up here, and again, our other instructors are going to talk about those in a minute. There will be in your research, it's going to provide you with visuals that you can pull from some of those sources that you'll be going to, and you'll understand that better in just a few minutes. Now again, you're working with your PLC, so again, you should have regular meetings, so your appendices should always have at least an agenda where you've met, and it should have minutes of your meeting at a minimum. So, and there may be other things as well. Again, I advise you, not a lot of pictures, because it's not a, we don't want a picture gallery, but you should have evidence of every now and then of you presenting to your group, so I would put those in ever so often. And then this definitely will have a reference section because you're doing research. So there should be a reference section in this as well. Now, let's go back. I want to take you to a place. Let me see. I'm going to minimize that. Yay, I did it. And then I want to take you to the give me 1 second. Let me find it. Write it down. APA format materials. Here it is. Okay, if you go to the APA format materials section in Blackboard, we have placed in there a great resource that's going to help you. It is entitled Annotated Bibliographies. If you click on that, and you scroll down to the left, do you see right here where it says Annotated Bibliographies? This provides you all the information that you need to be able to do your annotated bibliography correct according to APA. If I click on this, annotated bibliographies, let's just look at it, and what does it say? Okay, it tells me what a regular bibliography is, and then it tells me what an annotated bibliography is. There is a difference. And you know, and all of you should already know it, but an annotated bibliography, it may be before your day. In my day, when I was younger, we used to have Reader's Digest. Who's ever heard of Reader's Digest before? Well, Reader's Digest was not the whole book. It was just a summary of the whole book. And that's kind of what an annotated bibliography is. It's a summary of different things that you're researching, and it gives you enough information that you have an idea of actually what it is that you're looking at, instead of just a plain bibliography. That's just an entry where you can go find something. This actually has the proof in the pudding right there. It gives you some information that you can quickly refer to. Now let's look under here, annotated bibliography examples. And now I want you to look at, this is an example, and I want you to look at specifically, you're going to have to look at specifically, according to APA, how they're formatted. And you'll need to follow the examples as APA requires you to follow those examples. And you see there's the reference sections, and then the summaries of that. And let's look at one more, annotated bibliography samples. Make sure that you look at the sections that says APA. These are APA annotations. Do you see again? That shows you how it's written. So we've provided you with a resource. Purdue OWL is a great resource that will help you in making sure that you've done this correctly. And again, follow it correctly as you're doing your annotations. There's lots of work in there. It has narrative work that you can go in there and read that will help you better understand exactly what it is that you're looking for. Oh man, okay, Dr. Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton is going to share with you as a sitting principal. She's going to talk with you over the next few minutes and provide you with some examples of some research-based programs, and she's just going to provide you with some other information that you can refer to and have a better understanding of what it is that you're doing with your literature review and your annotated bibliography. Dr. Hamilton, if you would.
So, hey, good evening. So glad to see you all. So as you are going through and you're looking at your data and you're determining your problem that you want to address in this task, one of the things that you're going to need to do is look and see what could we use to maybe help us find a need. So we, some things that we tend to use in our school or things that in our district or in other districts that I've been in, like for phonics in the early grades, Foundations, Letterland, Saxon Phonics, Saxon Math, in elementary and middle grades. A lot of schools have done reading recovery over the years, Success for All. I'm sorry?
Foundations.
Foundations, yep. Read Naturally, iReady. That's been a big thing in our district. I don't know if that's something that's across the state right now. Middle school, Success for All again, Saxon Algebra, and things of that nature. So these are all like programs, not to be confused with practices, as Dr. Stedman talked about a few minutes ago as well, that we could look at in these PLCs and trying to solve our problems. many of these programs, there's a website out of Washington, D.C., and it's called the What Works Clearinghouse. And you can go to that website and you can look up a program or even a practice like repeated reading. And you can see if the What Works Clearinghouse found the research studies. What they do is they review existing research on different programs or products or practices in education to help educators make evidence-based decisions. So what I found in preparing was when I went to this, a lot of the things that we even use in our district, maybe there hasn't been enough information in research for the What Works Clearinghouse to, with confidence, say, yes, we know that this is absolutely going to work when applied with Fidelity. But that doesn't mean that it's still something that can't work or doesn't work well, especially when applied with Fidelity through the programmatic directives. I think when you really tease out what your problem is, let's say if your problem is comprehension. Well, when I was looking through the What Works Clearinghouse, they had the practice of repeated reading. I would have probably argued that the practice of repeated reading builds fluency, but they did not have research to support that. That doesn't mean it's not there. They just haven't reviewed it. They didn't have the research to support that, but they did have research to support that repeated readings helps improve comprehension. And what I do like about that site as well is it would give you all of the research articles. It tells you where you can find them, where you can locate them. It tells you if there are positive effects or mixed effects or just not enough evidence. It tells you the grade span that the research was performed in. So that's just a great source for you while you're going through this and you're looking for your references and helping to solve your problem.
Okay, Dr. Shepherd.
Yes, I had listed a couple of strategies here. Really, if we look at research-based programs per se, I think that a program in high school is going to be there are a lot of, quote, resources out there, but when I think of a program that's going to be implemented across a curriculum, for instance, say English 2 or your ESL sheltered English classes or your math courses, a lot of those programs in high school are going to be very comprehensive programs. And so you're going to have to implement them a certain way, make sure you provide a framework for them. I've listed a few here that I know that are popular or work, but there are a number of research-based programs that you could go out there. And I think Dr. Hamilton gave a great resource there to go out and look some of these up and take a look at them. ALEKS is a program that is used in math, Read 180 for a lot of ESL and special needs readers there, and lower grades, even in OCS courses. LEAD is a new model for Leader in Me that just came out about 2 years ago for high school. It's a comprehensive program for really your culture. I know a lot of you guys probably heard of the Leader in Me, especially in elementary schools, but LEAD is a new model for high schools, and there's a huge attachment there for academic success, and so that's something that's new that they've done. AVID is another program. Edgenuity is a blended learning program. That's also a recovery program for students, and I know that's a very popular thing with districts with blended learning. I didn't list Edgenuity in there, but that's another one. Major Clarity is another program a lot of school counselors use. High school is big and broad and wide, and there's a lot of areas to touch on. I think that you have to decide where your specific gaps are. And if you're going to use a program, you have to think about the comprehensive use of that and how that framework fits into what your PLC is trying to complete and what your goals are. I don't think you can implement, quote, a program with Fidelity if you do it for a few months and then drop out of doing it and you stop doing it. It's got to be something that's lasting and long, and you got to measure the success or failures of that program. Definitely using some evaluation tools. And so going with what's been researched is great, but don't always be afraid of taking on something new and looking at it and adapting resources. You can look at a lot of different strategies and resources that are not necessarily a quote program or a full-fledged framework that you can implement in your PLC. Note-taking strategy that all of your English teachers are going to use. What do they get out of that? How are they word mapping? Is there a specific way you want those word maps to go? Those can be great strategies that also go right alongside a comprehensive program or framework that you can implement to reach your goals in a PLC. And so here's just a list, a few of them there.
Okay, thank you. Thank both of you. Dr. Crawford, would you have something that you would like to sum up all that with?
Yeah, so going back to making sure you apply the right strategy to the right intervention that you need. Having now done elementary, middle, and high school, there are some things now that I would do differently in a middle school and high school based on what I've learned in being in elementary school. Dr. Shepard is right. High schools are very big and very broad. And it's really hard to get at, why that 16-year-old ninth grader is still struggling to read. Perhaps Read 180 which really focuses on comprehension, is not going to help him when the student never really mastered, even something as simple as phonemic awareness. But that's not something high schools really have a lot of opportunity to know, unfortunately. But I think the clearinghouse is really, really good and should really give you a good direction on what to do.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out, I cannot get this, there it is. So I can come back over. I'm still learning, Dr. Hamilton. But guys, they have given you a lot of information in just a short amount of time. And the whole purpose of this was so that you would have, in your mind, you would have something to work with. You would know, at least you would have something to identify with. Now, at each of your schools, it's going to be something different. You may already have something there that you can compare to, but remember, you're looking at something to hopefully introduce that is different from what you're already doing at the school. Because if you've got problems, then what you're doing, I'm not saying that it's not working and it's not effective, but it's not enough. So you've got to look for additional resources that can hopefully help you make a difference with your identified problem. In closing, I would like for us to look at our upcoming week, week 5. Now, you know what is due this coming Sunday night. Let's look at week 5, because you should always be working on your current week and know what's ahead of you. The APSL Task 3 revisions will be due to the instructor the next Sunday night. So you're going to turn it in for review this week, but then next week it will be due, and next week we are going to introduce to you Task 4 of the APSL. Next week, not this week, Task 3 peer reviews, 2 of them will be due to the assignment Dropbox. However, if you get to a place that you've cleared things and your work is in there in discussion board and it's being cleared, then you don't have to wait on next week. You can always get ahead if you want to. Then next week, this is where I want to point out, APSL Task 1 and 2, the Zoom conference. Some of you have already begun doing that, but let me point out, you're looking at task, we specifically said task 1 and 2. I really don't care, Dr. Crawford, as long as they're talking about the APSL, they can talk about every one of the tasks in that, and as long as that is as you are doing a scholarly conversation and it's not just running rabbits and doing things that are not related. As long as it's dealing with the APSL and the things that you're doing with that, we said task 1 and 2, but you can talk about anything as it relates to the APSL as a Zoom team if that's what you need to do there.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Be a Zoom captain, And then the Zoom captain will actually upload the video, make a YouTube out of it. We'll send the team members the link, and it will be the same link. But for you to get your grade, every one of you will have to send that link to either put it in Blackboard for a grade, the same link. Now, the good thing about it for Dr. Crawford and me is that when we look at our teams, we only have to look at it one time. And so if we give you quick feedback on it, that means that we have already reviewed it from somebody that has already sent it in, and we don't have to look at it again because we know what it already is about, but we're just going to give you the feedback and give you your grade on it. And then again, not this week, but next week, already looking ahead, the APSL Task 4 draft will be due in Blackboard's discussion board. Folks, you realize in about 3 weeks you will be through with one whole evidence? It's moving along. You will be through with one whole evidence. It will be ready for Task Stream, which Dr. Lamb is going to that's most of all of Thursday night is going to be devoted to Task Stream, what you need to begin doing in there. He's going to introduce you to it. I'm thinking that all of your accounts in Task Stream will be up, but don't mess with it until he has a chance to really go over it and then tell you what to do. Dr. Crawford, anything else that?
No, I sent you a private question. You can just answer me that when I can send an email out to my folks.
Okay. Work with them individually on that, and that will be your decision. Okay.
Okay, got you.
Okay. Anything else, Dr. Shepard?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, Dr. Hamilton, you are in charge of the benediction tonight.
Oh, well, bless you all. Praying for y'all every night. You're going to make it, and you're going to do great. Everybody have a great night.
Okay, students, if you need us, you know how to reach out to us, okay? Okay, have a good night.
Night.